From Consortium News Some 3 weeks after Hurricane Maria shredded Puerto Rico, the situation on the U.S. island territory remains grave, with only about 10% of Puerto Rico's residents having electricity, according to the Puerto Rico Electric Power Authority. Meanwhile, thousands of people remain in packed shelters in San Juan. Health and public officials now worry about a developing public health crisis, with outbreaks of several deadly water and airborne diseases that have not plagued the island for years, including 4 confirmed cases of leptospirosis, a rat urine-borne disease that can be deadly. The death toll has risen to about 50, although a precise count is difficult given the lack of telephone service in remote areas. On October 11, I spoke with attorney and human rights activist Judith Birkin about the ongoing rescue and recovery, and the major failures on the part of the Trump administration to deal with a very serious ongoing life and death situation. Dennis Bernstein, tell us about your day-to-day. You were delivering generators, Judith Birkin. People are organizing here like crazy, given the absence of effective official relief. We went out into the countryside today to deliver a generator, flashlights and batteries. Dennis Bernstein, before we get into the government failure, tell us about the situation on the ground and the other kinds of actions taken by people who obviously realize that there is racism at play and the federal government is out of town. Judith Birkin, in some ways it has gotten a little worse than when we spoke last week. The electrical power, which was beginning to come on at a very slow rate, has now basically collapsed again. Virtually no one has power. The other thing that has changed is that we are beginning to see in concrete ways a public health crisis developing. We have 4 confirmed cases of leptospirosis, a rat urine-borne disease you get from being exposed to water or mud, and which must be treated very early or it is fatal. About 7 other cases have been identified in 4 island towns. We also have mosquito-borne diseases, and stagnant waters are breeding grounds for mosquitoes. We are experiencing major problems with our hospitals. A lot of them no longer have electrical power. Everything we anticipated happening is beginning to happen. People cannot get fresh food. Asthma and other respiratory diseases are rampant. People are dying in nursery homes with limited access to power. They are rationing dialysis at most hospitals. Apparently there is some kind of official narrative being heard in the United States that things are vastly improved, that the federal and state response has been good. This is not at all the case. The long-term effects of this storm are going to be worse than the storm itself. It is a lot worse in the countryside than it is here in San Juan, and it has been from the beginning. About half the island now has water, but the water is unsafe for drinking. Health officials are telling people to boil the water before drinking it, but no one has electricity. There is no strategic planning, and there is a sense of total chaos in coordination of services, whether it is the Red Cross or FEMA or the Coast Guard. Nobody seems to know who is supposed to do what. It is a devastating situation, and I believe it is going to get worse before it gets better. Dennis Bernstein, on the island of Vieques, people are concerned that toxins there are being scattered around by the storms. Judith Birkin, yes, on the offshore islands the situation is even worse. In 1942 and 1943 the U.S. expropriated the islands and continued to bomb Vieques until 2003. There is so much toxic material still in the groundwater, and one of the problems with the lack of sanitation is that the toxins tend to propagate. Another issue is that we have had extraordinarily heavy rains in the last 3 days, which has caused flooding because the waterways are full of debris. There hasn't been a cleanup since Irma. Next page 1 to http www.flashpoints.net. Dennis J. Bernstein is the host and executive producer of Flashpoints, a daily news magazine broadcast on Pacifica Radio. He is an award-winning investigative reporter, essayist and poet. His articles and essays have appeared in the New York Times, the Boston Globe, The Nation, and more. The views expressed in this article are the sole responsibility of the author and do not necessarily reflect those of this website or its editors. Want to post your own comment on this article?